An unbelievable event happened one summer night in the emergency room of a university hospital. An old man fell down clutching his chest, but his daughter-in-law spoke calmly. "This person is not our family." A legendary nurse who saved countless lives at this hospital over 40 years. But that night, she was kicked out of the very emergency room she had dedicated her life to. The secret hidden 30 years ago behind the daughter-in-law's cruel choice. And the mother-in-law's final decision, unknown to anyone. If you listen to this story to the end, you will think again about the meaning of family. You can help us make videos by subscribing and liking. Okay, then let's begin today's story. You are not the type of person who needs treatment here, so please leave. At 7 o'clock on a midsummer evening, a shrill voice rang out from the reception desk of the emergency room at a university hospital. A woman in her 30s, carrying a luxury handbag, spoke coldly as she pushed a wheelchair. The old man sitting in the wheelchair had a pale face and was clutching his chest. Kim Soon-ya, at the age of 68, was trying to maintain an upright posture. But her trembling hands and cold sweat running down her forehead could not be hidden. "Yu-jin, please." Breath. Sunja barely opened her mouth. But daughter-in-law Lee Yu-jin didn't even turn her head. The emergency room nurse came over. The young nurse Choi Eun-mi's face hardened as soon as she saw Sunja's condition. "Mother, you need to get medical attention quickly. Your complexion is really bad," Eun-mi said urgently. Then Yu-jin interrupted. "We're just going to go. We're going to another hospital." Yu-jin's voice was laced with irritation. Eun-mi looked at Sunja with a puzzled expression. Sunja's lips were already turning blue. "Sir, the patient's condition appears to be critical. We need to perform an electrocardiogram immediately," Eun-mi said urgently. Yu-jin sighed as she took her cell phone out of her handbag. "Who's going to pay for the medical bills? Do you know this person doesn't have health insurance?" It was a cold, everyone in the emergency room waiting room's eyes were all focused in that direction. Eun-mi looked at Yu-jin with an expression of disbelief. "But you are still my mother. You're in so much pain," Eun-mi said cautiously. Yu-jin sneered. "What about your mother? My husband brought you here to take care of you. I never said I would take care of you." Yu-jin's voice grew louder. Other patients and guardians in the waiting room began to chatter. Sunja lowered her head and said nothing. Her hands were gripping the wheelchair armrests weakly. "Yu-jin, call Taejin," Sunja managed to say, in a trembling voice. Yu-jin just stared at his phone screen. "My brother is in surgery right now. He's busy." Although he said that, Yu-jin's fingers were moving busily across the game screen. Eun-mi couldn't stand it any longer. "Guardian, the patient looks really dangerous if you do this." That was the time. Sunja's body fell forward in the wheelchair. "Mother," Eun-mi quickly ran over and held. Sunja's face was completely pale, and her breathing was shallow and irregular. "One bed, quick, get the EKG monitor ready," Eun-mi shouted to the other nurses. The emergency room was instantly filled with tension. The medical staff began to move Sunja to the emergency bed. Yu-jin watched the scene from a distance with his arms crossed. The corners of her mouth remained irritated. Why are you acting like this today? You should just rest at home. Yu-jin muttered. While Eun-mi held Sun-ja's wrist and took her pulse, another nurse prepared a blood pressure monitor. Your blood pressure is 90/60. Your pulse is irregular. The nurse's urgent voice echoed through the emergency room. The doctor on duty came running. Guardian, the patient's condition is serious. I need to get tested and treated right away, so please fill out a consent form. The doctor handed Yu-jin some papers. Yu-jin did not accept the documents. I'm not your guardian. I'm just the one who gave you a lift, Yu-jin said firmly. A look of bewilderment crossed the faces of the doctors and nurses. Well then, who are your family members? The doctor asked cautiously. My husband, but he's having surgery right now, so he can't come, Yu-jin answered nonchalantly. Then contact other family members. No. He has no family. But my husband, Yu-jin's answer was cold. At that moment, a tear flowed from Sunja's eye. It wasn't just the pain in my chest that was painful. To be treated this way in this hospital, in this emergency room, where she had dedicated herself for over 40 years. Eun-mi's heart ached at the sight of Sun-ja's tears. Are you okay? I'll make sure you get treatment, Eun-mi whispered, holding Sun-ja's hand tightly. Sunja shook her head. Are you okay? I want to go home. Sunja's voice was so soft that it was almost inaudible. But the sadness and resignation contained within it were deeper than anyone else's. Yu-jin sighed as he looked at his watch. Oh, really? I'm wasting my time. I have to hurry up and go home, Yu-jin said in an annoyed voice. Just then, the emergency room door opened and a woman came rushing in. She was a woman in her mid-60s, dressed in a neat suit. Park Chung-hee was the director of this hospital. Jung-hee was looking around the emergency room when she found Sun-ya lying on the bed. At that moment, Jung-hee's face turned white. Sunja, Jung-hee screamed. Sunja's name. Park Chung-hee ran to Sun-ya and grabbed her hand. Sunja, what happened? Why did it turn out like this? Jung-hee's voice was trembling. Sunja opened her eyes faintly. Jung-hee, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you, Sun-ya managed to say. Jung-hee shook her head and turned towards the medical staff. Get an electrocardiogram and blood tests done right away. Call the cardiologist on duty. Jung-hee's voice was firm. Started moving quickly. Then Yu-jin intervened. Excuse me, director. I have a problem with the medical bills, Yu-jin said, trying to sound polite. Jung-hee looked at Yu-jin coldly. I will pay for the medical expenses. Patient care comes first right now. Jung-hee's answer was short and clear. Yu-jin's face was distorted. Why is the director paying this person's medical bill? What is their relationship? Yu-jin asked, his voice cracking. Jung-hee looked straight at Yu-jin. Mr. Kim Sun-ya has worked at this hospital for 40 years. As a nurse, you saved thousands of lives. The emergency room became quiet for a moment at Jung-hee's words. A few older nurses nearby began to recognize Sunja. Oh, are you teacher Kim Sun-ya? You really are a teacher, Sunja. You taught me a lot when I was a newbie. Surprised voices from the nurses could be heard here and there. Yu-jin looked puzzled. That's it. That was a long time ago. He's been retired for a long time now, Yu-jin said as if making an excuse. Jung-hee's eyes grew cold. That was a long time ago? If it weren't for Dr. Sunja, this hospital's emergency room wouldn't be running as well as it is now. Jung-hee spoke clearly and concisely. Yu-jin bit his lip. Her face was full of discontent. But isn't it right for the family to pay the medical expenses? There's no reason for the director to bear the burden. Yu-jin persisted until the very end. Jung-hee sighed. Then will the guardian take responsibility? Jung-hee asked directly. Yu-jin hesitated for a moment and then shook his head. I am just a daughter-in-law. And to be honest, my mother-in-law and I aren't very close. Yu-jin's answer was cold. People in the waiting room were murmuring. Where can you find a daughter-in-law like that? How can you say something like that when your mother-in-law is sick? Yu-jin heard the people's voices mixed with criticism. Yu-jin's face turned red. But she didn't back down. No matter what people say, I'm just stating my position. My mother-in-law is my mother-in-law. And I am me. Yu-jin raised his voice. Sunja closed her eyes while lying on the bed. Tears flowed from her eyes again. Jung-hee held Sunja's hand tightly. Sunja, don't worry. I'll take care of everything. Jung-hee whispered affectionately. The medical staff began to move Sunja to the examination room. Yu-jin watched the scene with his arms crossed. Jung-hee approached Yu-jin. You're the patient's guardian, right? Could you please contact the patient's son? Jung-hee said politely but firmly. Yu-jin sighed as he took out his cell phone. What would you do if I called you? I'm busy, so I won't be able to pick up. Yu-jin reluctantly called. The phone rang for a long time, but no one answered. You see, I didn't accept it, Yu-jin said with a shrug. Jung-hee had a miserable expression on her face. Then please send me a text message. My mother is in critical condition. Jung-hee made an earnest request. Yu-jin tapped his phone annoyedly. Mom, emergency room, the director said. Pay the bill. Come back after the surgery. Yu-jin was surprisingly indifferent. Jung-hee glanced at the text and said nothing. Yu-jin got up and grabbed her handbag. I guess I should go now. There's no one at home to look after the kids. It was the moment Yu-jin was about to leave. Yoon-mi came running in a hurry. Guardian, the patient's condition is not good. I suspect myocardial infarction. Yoon-mi's voice was urgent. Yu-jin paused for a moment. But she shook her head. Still, I have to go. It won't help if I stay here, Yu-jin said firmly. Jung-hee grabbed Yu-jin's arm. Guardian, the patient is in a very dangerous situation right now. You need to have family there in case of an emergency. Jung-hee persuaded him. Yu-jin shook off Jung-hee's hand. Director, please leave me alone. I really have to go. Yu-jin's voice was filled with irritation. At that moment, Eun-mi, who had brought Sun Ya out of the examination room, shouted. Abnormal ECG findings. Blood pressure is dropping rapidly. The emergency room is on edge again. The medical staff began to move quickly. Yu-jin didn't move even after seeing the sight. No, I actually tried to get out faster. I'm sorry, but I really have to go. Yu-jin walked towards the emergency room door. The people in the waiting room looked at Yu-jin with astonishment. Is that daughter-in-law really human? How could she just leave like that while her mother-in-law was dying? A voice of accusation was heard from behind Yu-jin. Yu-jin left the emergency room with his ears covered. Jung-hee looked at Yu-jin's back with a dejected expression. And then he turned back to Sunja. Sunja was breathing with difficulty while wearing an oxygen mask. Sunja, it's okay. I'll be by your side, Jung-hee said, holding Sunja's hand. Sunja nodded faintly. There was deep sadness in her eyes. In this hospital, where she had dedicated 40 years, she was being treated this way by the wife of the son she had raised. Sunja's heart ached more from emotional wounds than physical pain. Yoonmi approached Jung-hee. Director, is it true that the patient used to work at this hospital? Yoonmi asked cautiously. Jung-hee nodded. Of course, Dr. Sunja is a legend in this. She worked here from the 1980s to 2015. There was respect in Jung-hee's voice. Yoonmi looked at Sunja and lowered her head. I can't believe that my daughter-in-law would treat that person like that, Yoonmi said with regret. Jung-hee let out a deep sigh. The world has changed a lot. Things that would have been unimaginable in the past are happening now, Jung-hee said sadly. At that moment, the cardiologist on duty arrived. How is the patient's condition? The doctor on duty asked while checking the chart. Jung-hee briefly explained the situation. The doctor on duty looked at the electrocardiogram and shook his head. I think it's a myocardial infarction. We need to move you to the intensive care unit immediately. Everyone was nervous about the doctor on duty's diagnosis. Jung-hee held Sunja's hand tighter. Sunja, just hold on a little longer. You have to live. Jung-hee's voice was desperate. Sunja smiled faintly beyond her oxygen mask. That smile contained both resignation and gratitude. At this moment, after 40 years of dedication, Sunja wondered if her life had truly had meaning. The hallway leading to the intensive care unit was long and dark. Sunja lay on the movable bed and looked at the fluorescent lights on the ceiling. 1, 2, 3. Sunja counted the passing lights. I remembered the spring of 1978, the day when 21-year-old Sunja first entered the hospital. That day, I went to work in the emergency room for the first time, wearing a white nurse's uniform and trembling. New nurse, every minute and every second here is a life or death decision. Wake up, please. The senior nurse's stern voice was still vivid in my ears. Sunja spent over 40 years in the emergency room from that day on. The sound of ambulance sirens blaring day and night was Sunja's daily routine. Patients brought in after traffic accidents, elderly people suffering from heart attacks. People suffering from acute abdominal pain. Sunja stayed by their side. In 1985, Sunja got married. My husband was a diligent office worker, but his income was not sufficient. The following year, their son Taejin was born. Sunja volunteered to work the night shift, carrying her son on her back. Teacher Sunja, go home and rest. You have a baby. Although her colleagues tried to stop her, Sunja shook her head. It's okay. I like working. Sunja's answers were always calm. But the truth was different. A night shift allowance was needed. When Taejin was 5 years old, her husband passed away in a car accident. Sunja became a single mother overnight. I couldn't even shed tears properly at the funeral. Because 3 days later I had to go back to the emergency room. Mom, when is Dad coming? Sunja's heart would break every time little Taejin asked. But Sunja had to swallow her tears and smile. Dad is watching over our Taejin from heaven. Sunja worked harder for Taejin. I lived in the hospital without any weekends or holidays. Taejin grew up in his grandmother's care. Mom, I got an award at school today. Mom, I got into middle school. Mom, I got first place in high school. Sunja missed most of Taejin's important moments. When I returned home from working in the emergency room all night, Taejin had already gone to school. But Sunja didn't give up. All I could think about was sending my son to a good university. It was the year Taejin was in his 3rd year of high school. Mom, I want to go to medical school. Sunja's heart sank at Taejin's words. Medical school tuition was astronomical. Sunja couldn't sleep that night. The next day, Sunja headed to the hospital administration office. Can I get my retirement pay in advance? Sunja asked cautiously. The administrative staff looked surprised. Teacher, I still have over 10 years left until retirement. Something urgent has come up. Sunja bowed her head. In the end, Sunja took out a loan using her retirement pay as collateral. Taejin was accepted to medical school. Thank you, Mom. When I grow up, I'll make sure. Mom has a good life. Taejin smiled brightly. Sunja felt like everything was compensated for by that one smile. But the 6 years of medical school were hell for Sunja. To cover the endless expenses of tuition, living expenses, books, and hospital internships, Sunja worked more night shifts. On my days off, I worked part-time at another hospital. Even though she was over 60, Sunja did not rest. My back was bent and my knees were numb, but I endured it. Teacher Sunja, you should rest now. Take care of your health. Her colleagues were worried. But Sunja just laughed it off. Are you okay? I'm still in good health. Sunja's voice was always bright. But every night, Sunja swallowed painkillers and tried to sleep. In 2015, Taejin finally became a doctor. I was appointed as an orthopedic specialist at this hospital. That day, Sunja went up to the roof of the hospital alone and cried. They were tears of joy. It was the moment when 40 years of hard work finally bore fruit. But that joy was short-lived. Taejin soon married Yu-jin. Yu-jin was Taejin's college classmate. Mom, let me introduce you to Yu-jin. We're getting married soon. When Taejin spoke excitedly, Sunja had an ominous feeling. Yu-jin's cold and calculating gaze made Sunja uncomfortable. Mother, I ask for your help in the future. Yu-jin's greeting was formal. After marriage, Sunja came to live with Taejin at his house. Mom, Yu-jin wants to live with us. He said that if I watch the kids, he can work. Sunja nodded at Taejin's words. But Yu-jin's true feelings were different. Yu-jin treated Sunja like a housekeeper. Mom, please send the kids to school and do the laundry. Mother, please make kimchi stew for dinner tonight. Mom, please help me with the kids' homework. I have to go out for an appointment. Sunja did everything silently. I would do anything for Taejin. But Yu-jin's attitude became increasingly colder. Mom, my friends are coming over. Please stay in your room. It's not
Mom,
nice to see
those
them.
clothes seem a bit old.
Wear something different when you go out. Mother, hospital bills are so high these days. If you're sick, you have to endure it. Every single word Yu-jin said pierced Sunja's heart like a nail. But Sunja endured it. If Taejin was happy, that was enough. But today, what happened in the emergency room shattered the last of Sunja's pride. In this hospital, where she had dedicated 40 years, she was being humiliated by the wife of the son she had raised with all her heart. Sunja wept on the gurney. Are you okay? Eun-mi asked, wiping Sunja's tears. Sunja shook her head. That didn't mean it didn't hurt. It meant that nothing was okay anymore. When I arrived in front of the intensive care unit, Jung-hee was waiting. Sunja, just rest here. I'll take care of everything, Jung-hee said, taking Sunja's hand. Sunja nodded faintly. And he muttered in a small voice. Jung-hee, what did I do wrong? Sunja's voice was so small and sad. Jung-hee held Sunja's hand tighter. There was nothing I could say in response. The intensive care unit door opened and Sunja went inside. Jung-hee looked at Sun-ya until the moment the door closed. The lonely back of her friend of 40 years broke Jung-hee's heart. Outside the intensive care unit, Jung-hee returned to her office. I pulled out an old album from my desk drawer. It was full of photos from the 1980s. I saw a photo of Sunja in her younger days smiling brightly. Sunja, 25 years old, was beautiful in her white nurse's uniform. Jung-hee stroked the photo and sighed deeply. Sunja, I can't believe you've ended up like this. Jung-hee turned on her computer and searched the hospital personnel records. Kim Soon-ya joined the company on March 2, 1978. Retired on August 31, 2015. Total service period 37 years and 5 months. Her awards are displayed on the screen. Model Nurse Award 15 times, Meritorious Service Award 9 times, Life-Saving Service Award 23 times. Jung-hee's eyes widened. Receiving the Life-Saving Merit Award 23 times meant that he had saved 23 lives through direct emergency treatment. Jung-hee scrolled down further. There were recorded there the peers' evaluations of Sunja. Teacher Kim Soon-ya is the mother of the emergency room. She is the person who teaches new nurses the most warmly. Thanks to Teacher Kim Soon-ya, I was able to continue my career as a nurse. Dr. Kim Soon-ya is a person who gives hope to patients. Tears welled up in Jung-hee's eyes. How could such a wonderful person be treated like this by his own daughter-in-law? Jung-hee picked up her phone. I found Kim Tae-jun's number and called him. After 3 beeps, the call was connected. Hello? Taejin's voice sounded tired. Teacher Taejin, this is Director Park Jung-hee. Jung-hee's voice was firm. Taejin remained silent for a moment, as if embarrassed. Oh, Director. What's going on? Taejin asked cautiously. Please come to the intensive care unit right now. My mother is in critical condition. Taejin's voice trembled at Jung-hee's words. Huh, Mom? What's going on? Taejin asked urgently. It's a myocardial infarction. He was brought to the emergency room this evening, but his wife refused treatment. At Jung-hee's words, the phone became quiet. That's it, what do you mean? Taejin's voice was filled with disbelief. Come and see for yourself. Right now, Jung-hee hung up the phone. 10 minutes later, Taejin was rushed to the intensive care unit. I couldn't even take off my scrubs. Mom, Taejin shouted from the intensive care unit door. Jung-hee stopped him. You can't enter right now. We're checking. Jung-hee said calmly. Taejin looked at Sunja through the window. Sunja, wearing an oxygen mask, looked so small and weak. Tears flowed from Taejin's eyes. Director, is my mother really in critical condition? Taejin asked with a trembling voice. Jung-hee nodded. It looks like a myocardial infarction. If I had been just a little late, it could have been a disaster. Taejin hesitated at Jung-hee's words. I didn't know. I didn't know Mom was this sick. Taejin clutched his head. Jung-hee looked down at Taejin. Teacher Taejin, can I ask you something? Jung-hee's voice was quiet but sharp. Taejin raised his head. Is it true that your mother doesn't have health insurance? Taejin's face turned red at Jung-hee's question. That's it. After Mom quit her job, trailed off. As if making an excuse. Jung-hee's eyes grew cold. My mother worked at this hospital for 37 years. Does it make sense that such a person would be left without health insurance? There was anger in Jung-hee's voice. Taejin lowered his head. Sorry. I didn't pay attention. Taejin's apology was weak. Then Yu-jin appeared at the end of the hallway. She was still holding her luxury handbag. Brother, were you here? Yu-jin found Taejin and approached him. Taejin's face hardened when he saw Yu-jin. Yu-jin, what the hell is going on? Taejin's voice was trembling. Yu-jin answered calmly. What happened? I brought my mother to the hospital. She suddenly fell ill. Eugene's tone made it sound as if he had done a good job. Jung-hee intervened. Madam, why did you refuse treatment? The patient is in critical condition. Eugene's expression hardened at Jung-hee's question. That's because of the medical bills. Eugene explained. Taejin grabbed Eugene's arm. Medical fees? I'm a doctor. Is medical fees a problem? Taejin's voice grew louder. Eugene shook off Taejin's hand. You don't know, Oppa. How tight is our household finances? How can you afford your mother's hospital bills? Eugene raised his voice. Jung-hee watched the two people arguing. Stop it, you two. This is the intensive care unit. Jung-hee said firmly. Taejin bowed his head towards Jung-hee. I'm sorry, director. I will pay all of your mother's medical expenses. Taejin barely managed to speak. Jung-hee shook her head. I have already taken care of the medical expenses. My mother is the hero of this hospital. We should take responsibility for her. Taejin lowered his head even more at Jung-hee's words. Eugene made a dissatisfied expression. Director, isn't that against hospital regulations? Eugene asked questioningly. Jung-hee looked straight at Eugene. Mr. Kim Soon-ya devoted 37 years to this hospital. This is a natural courtesy. Jung-hee's voice was firm. Eugene couldn't say anything else. Then the intensive care unit door opened. The cardiologist came out. Do you have a guardian? The doctor looked around. Taejin quickly approached. Me, I am the son. Taejin said urgently. The doctor looked at the chart and explained. The patient was diagnosed with acute myocardial infarction. Fortunately, thanks to quick first aid, there is no danger to his life. The doctor paused. Taejin's face turned pale. But the patient's heart condition is not good. It seems like it's a result of accumulated fatigue and stress. Taejin was speechless at the doctor's words. Jung-hee asked, "What is the treatment plan going forward?" "You will need to stay in the intensive care unit for about a week. Afterwards, depending on the condition, the patient will be moved to a general ward or undergo additional treatment." The doctor's explanation is over. Taejin looked at Sunja through the intensive care unit window. Sunja still had her eyes closed and was wearing the oxygen mask. Taejin's heart felt like it was being torn apart. "My mother sacrificed her entire life for me. I felt so ashamed of myself for not being able to properly care for her." Jung-hee put her hand on Tae-jun's shoulder. "Teacher Taejin, from now on, please take good care of your mother." Jung-hee's voice was warm but firm. Taejin nodded and wiped away his tears. Yu-jin watched the scene from a distance. Her face was still filled with discontent and irritation. But now things have changed. The director stepped forward, and the entire hospital took Sunja's side. Yu-jin felt that his plans were going awry. She bit her lip and walked down the hallway. 3 days have passed. Sunja's condition was gradually stabilizing. But it was still too early to leave the intensive care unit. Taejin came to visit his mother every day. "I guarded the front of the intensive care unit between surgeries. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Taejin muttered as he looked at his mother through the window. But Yu-jin's attitude did not change. Rather, he expressed his dissatisfaction more openly. That evening, when Taejin returned home, Yu-jin was sitting on the living room sofa with some papers spread out. "Brother, sit down. I think we need to talk." Yu-jin's voice was cold and somber. Taejin sat down on the sofa with his tired body. "What are you talking about?" Taejin asked in a tired voice. Yu-jin pushed the documents towards Taejin. "Look at this. It's our mortgage statement." Yu-jin pointed to the numbers. Taejin looked through the documents. It was full of home mortgages, car loans, and credit loans. "Why is this?" Taejin tilted his head. Yu-jin sighed. "Brother, do you know how difficult our situation is? The monthly loan interest alone exceeds 2 million won." Yu-jin's voice was filled with discontent. "I know, that's why I'm working hard." Taejin's answer was calm. Yu-jin got up from the sofa. "But now we have to pay for my mother's hospital bills too? Does that make sense?" Yu-jin's voice rose. Taejin frowned. "The director said he took care of the hospital bills," Taejin said quietly. Yu-jin laughed mockingly. "That's it for now. But what about the future? What will happen when my mother is discharged? What about the nursing home costs? What about the nursing costs?" Taejin remained silent as Yu-jin poured out questions. "And let me be honest. What has your mother ever done for us?" Taejin's face hardened at Yu-jin's words. "What are you talking about?" Taejin's voice trembled. Yu-jin crossed her arms and looked down at Taejin. "My mother didn't give me a single penny when my children were born. It's the same when buying a house or a car." Yu-jin's words were cold. Taejin clenched his fist. My mother gave me everything. My mom paid for all my medical school, tuition and living expenses. Taejin managed to get his voice out. Eugene snorted. That was given to you, not to us. And isn't that a parent's natural duty? Taejin was left speechless at Eugene's words. Eugene continued, sitting back down on the sofa. Brother, think realistically. Both of our kids go to private elementary schools. The tuition alone is over $1,000,000 a month, Eugene explained. Plus, our house maintenance fees, living expenses, and loan interest. It's already tight, so what if we have to take care of my mother? 2. Eugene's logic was cold. Taejin lowered his head. Eugene put his hand on Taejin's shoulder. Brother, I'm not at ease either. But our family comes first. Our children come first. Eugene's voice softened, but his words were harsh. Taejin couldn't answer. Eugene took a deep breath and said, and honestly, where did your mother's fortune go? Taejin raised his head at Eugene's question. Mom's fortune? Taejin asked. Eugene nodded. Your mother worked at the hospital for 37 years. What about the severance pay? What about the pension? Where did all that money go? Eugene's eyes sharpened. Taejin bit his lip. I knew that my mother had taken out a loan, even using her retirement savings as collateral, to pay for her medical school tuition. But I never told that story to Eugene. That is, Taejin began to say. Eugene blocked it. You didn't use it all for your brother's tuition? Then there's nothing more surprising. Your mother gave everything to you. But you left nothing for yourself. Eugene's tone was accusatory. Taejin's face turned red. Eugene, don't talk like that. Taejin barely managed to speak. Eugene shook his head. I'm just telling the truth. My mother lived without a plan, you know. Every word Eugene said pierced Taejin's heart. Just then, Eugene's cell phone rang. Eugene received a phone call. Hello? Oh, sis. Yeah. I'm fine now. Eugene's voice brightened. Taejin watched Eugene talking on the phone. Yes, that's right. My mother-in-law was hospitalized. He had a heart attack. Yeah, it was a close call. Taejin was listening to what Eugene was saying. On the phone. But you know, sis, it looks like we'll have to pay all the hospital bills now. The director said he would pay it at first, but from now on, we will have to pay it. Eugene's voice was filled with discontent. Taejin clenched his fist. That's why your in-laws need to prepare for their old age. For everything? Eugene said, sympathizing with her sister over the phone. Taejin couldn't stand it any longer. Eugene, hang up. Taejin said in a low voice. Eugene glanced at Taejin and continued talking on the phone. Sister, I'll call you back later. Okay. Eugene hung up. Taejin got up and looked straight at Eugene. Eugene, don't tell anyone about your mother. Taejin's voice was firm. Eugene shrugged. Why? You're not someone else. Your family. Eugene's answer was shameless. Taejin let out a deep sigh. Eugene, please, Mom is sick. Right now. Please understand a little, Taejin said, pleading. Eugene said, sitting back down on the sofa. Brother, I understand. But reality is reality. What can we do in this situation? Yu-jin's words remained unchanged. Tae-jin went into the room and closed the door. Yu-jin, left alone, looked at his cell phone. There was a calculating light in her eyes. A few days later, rumors began to spread around the hospital. I heard that Ms. Kim Soon-ja's daughter-in-law is really that cold-hearted. I heard she even refused treatment in the emergency room. The director personally stepped in to help. Word about Yu-jin spread among the nurses. When Yu-jin came to visit, the nurses' gazes were cold. Yu-jin felt uncomfortable as he felt the gaze. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Yu-jin said annoyedly to one of the nurses. The nurse turned her head without saying anything. Yu-jin bit his lip and headed towards the intensive care unit. I saw Sunja through the window. Sunja was still weak, but conscious. Yu-jin muttered as he looked at Sunja. "How long are you going to lie there like that?" "Just paying the hospital bills." Yu-jin's voice was small, but venomous. At that moment, someone tapped Yu-jin on the shoulder from behind. When Yu-jin turned around, Jung-hee was standing there. "Madam, what did you just say?" Jung-hee's voice was cold and low. Yu-jin shook his head in confusion. "Oh, it's nothing," Yu-jin muttered. Jung-hee looked straight at Yu-jin. "Madam, the patient has dedicated 40 years to this hospital. You deserve to be treated properly." Yu-jin bit his lip at Jung-hee's words. But she didn't back down. "Director, please understand my position. I'm having a hard time too." Yu-jin made an excuse. Jung-hee shook her head. "When things are difficult, the family needs to work together even harder. There is no reason to ignore your mother." Jung-hee's words were firm. Yu-jin had nothing more to say. She turned and walked down the hall. Jung-hee looked at Yu-jin's back and sighed deeply. And I looked at Sunja beyond the intensive care unit window. Sunja had her eyes closed, but there were still dried tear stains in the corners of her eyes. A week has passed. Sunja was still lying in the intensive care unit. His condition seemed to be improving, but he was not fully recovered. One morning, Sunja's heartbeat began to become irregular. The monitor's alarm sounded. The nurse on duty came running. "Patient's condition is worsening. Call a doctor. An emergency has begun." Tae-jin was rushed to the intensive care unit. "Mom," Tae-jin's cry echoed through the hallway. The medical team was giving first aid to Sunja. After an hour of fighting, Sunja's condition barely stabilized. But my consciousness was hazy. Jung-hee entered the intensive care unit and held Sunja's hand. "Sunja, wake up. It's not time to go yet." Jung-hee's voice was trembling. Sunja opened her eyes faintly. Her gaze was unfocused. "Jung-hee," Sunja barely managed to open. "Yeah, it's me, Sunja." Jung-hee, "It's okay." Sunja's hand tightly. Sunja continued speaking with difficulty. "I'm sorry. I have something to say." Sunja's voice was barely audible. Jung-hee listened closely. "What are you talking about?" Jung-hee asked cautiously. Tears flowed from Sunja's eyes. "Yu-jin, that child." "Me." Sunja's words were cut off. Jung-hee was embarrassed. "Sunja, what happened to Yu-jin?" "What happened?" Jung-hee asked urgently. Sunja shook her head slowly. 39 years ago. That night. Here, in the emergency room. Sunja struggled to find the words. Jung-hee's eyes widened. 39 years ago, it was 1986. Jung-hee was also working at this hospital at that time. What happened? Jung-hee asked cautiously. Sunja closed her eyes and recalled the past. It was December 24, 1986, Christmas Eve. On a cold winter night, the emergency room was crowded with traffic accident patients. 29-year-old Sunja was busy caring for patients. After midnight, a woman was rushed in. Although she was a young woman, her face was pale and her whole body was covered in blood. What is the patient's name? Sunja asked. But the woman couldn't answer. She was pregnant and was already in labor. Call the obstetrician immediately, shouted the doctor on duty. Sunja took the woman's hand. It's okay. Cheer up. Sunja reassured. The woman moved her lips as she looked at Sunja. Baby, please, just the baby. The woman's voice was thin. Sunja nodded. Don't worry. I will definitely protect the baby, Sunja promised. Emergency surgery has begun. But the woman had lost too much blood. The car accident left him with severe internal organ damage. The baby was born safely by cesarean section. But the mother died on the operating table. Sunja held her newborn baby. It was a small and fragile life. The baby couldn't even cry properly. This baby has no guardian, the nurse reported hurriedly. The mother's identity has been confirmed. But none of the family showed up. A note found in the mother's purse read, Sorry. I can't raise a baby. Please send me to a good place. Sunja felt her heart break as she read the note. The baby was transferred to the neonatal unit. Sunja visited the baby every day and took care of him. Honey, don't worry. I'll find a place for you to go. Sunja whispered to the baby. A month has passed. The adoption process was carried out through the public health center. One day, a couple came to see the baby. They were a middle-aged couple who had no children and wanted to adopt. What is this child's name? Asked the woman. Sunja thought for a moment. There's no name yet. Your parents can build it for you. Sunja answered. The couple held their baby and cried. I want to raise this child as my daughter, the wife said earnestly. The adoption papers have been completed. The couple named their baby Yu-jin. Lee Yu-jin. Sun Ya engraved that name in her heart. On the day the baby left, Sunja held the baby for the last time. Yu-jin, you must live happily. You must grow up receiving the love that your mother could not give you. Sunja whispered to the baby. And 33 years passed. Sunja had no way of knowing how Yu-jin grew up. But fate was truly strange. One day, when Taejin was in medical school, he brought his girlfriend home. Mom, let me introduce you. This is my girlfriend, Lee. Yu-jin, Taejin said with a bright smile. The moment Sunja heard that name, her heart stopped. Yu-jin, the name of the baby she last held, 33 years ago. Sunja looked closely at Yu-jin. I calculated his age and found out that he was born exactly 33 years ago. Sunja asked in a trembling voice. Yu-jin, what do your parents do? Sunja asked cautiously. Yu-jin hesitated for a moment and then answered. I'm actually adopted. My biological parents don't know. Sunya was convinced by Yu-jin's answer. This child was that baby. It was the little life he had held in his arms 33 years ago. Tears flowed from Sunja's eyes. Why, mother? Yu-jin asked worriedly. Sunja quickly wiped away her tears. No, it's just that. I'm grateful that you met our Taejin, Sunja lied. But Sunja couldn't tell the truth. I was afraid that Yu-jin would be hurt by the fact that he was adopted. And most of all, I couldn't tell you how Yu-jin's biological mother died. From that day on, Sunja treated Yu-jin with even more special care. Yu-jin was not just a daughter-in-law. He was a child whose life he had saved and given new life to. But Yu-jin didn't know Sunja's heart. Rather, he felt burdened by Sunja's attention. Mom, don't worry too much. I can do it by myself. Yu-jin always said that. As time passed, Yu-jin's attitude became increasingly colder. Sunja endured it all. As long as this child was happy, that was enough. In the intensive care unit, Sunja told Jung-hee all about this. So, I couldn't say anything to Yu-jin. Sunja finished speaking with difficulty. Jung-hee was shocked. Then, Yu-jin only doesn't know that you're his savior? Jung-hee asked with an expression of disbelief. Sunja nodded. I couldn't say it. I'm afraid Yu-jin will get hurt. Tears flowed from Sunja's eyes again. Jung-hee held Sunja's hand tightly. Sunja, you have to tell me now. Yu-jin needs to know. Jung-hee said earnestly. Sunja shook her head. No, Yu-jin, just live happily. Sunja's voice grew fainter. And then I lost consciousness again. Jung-hee looked down at Sunya and sighed deeply. Now the time was coming when the whole truth would come out. Jung-hee couldn't sleep for several nights after hearing Sunja's story. Should I tell the truth or not? But Jung-hee was determined. Yu-jin needed to know. 3 days later, Jung-hee contacted Yu-jin. Madam, would you please come to the hospital? I have something important to discuss. Jung-hee's voice was firm. Yu-jin reluctantly came to the hospital. When he opened the door to Jung-hee's office, Yu-jin's face was filled with annoyance. Director, I'm a busy person. So it's inconvenient for you to call me like this. Jung-hee gestured for Yu-jin to sit down. Have a seat. It won't take long. Jung-hee said calmly. Yu-jin reluctantly sat down on the chair. Jung-hee pulled an old file from her desk drawer. It was the emergency room records from December 24, 1986. Madam, have you ever seen your own birth record? Jung-hee asked cautiously. Yu-jin's face hardened. Why, what does that matter? Yu-jin's voice became sharp. Jung-hee pushed the file towards Yu-jin. On December 24, 1986, a woman was brought to the emergency room of this hospital. She had been in a car accident. Jung-hee spoke slowly. Yu-jin's hands began to shake. The woman was pregnant and gave birth to the baby by emergency cesarean section. But the mother died that night. At Jung-hee's words, Eugene's face turned pale. That baby. That's you. Jung-hee said quietly. Eugene picked up the file. My hands were shaking badly. Inside the file were photos and records of the biological mother. And the name of the nurse in charge was written on it. Kim Soon-ya. Eugene's eyes widened at the sight of that name. Teacher Kim Soon-ya saved your life. After your mother passed away, the person who took care of you for a month and found you an adoptive family was teacher Sunja. Eugene was left speechless at Jung-hee's words. There was silence for a moment. Then suddenly Eugene started laughing. It was a cold, bitter laugh. So, sir, do you think I'll be moved, cry, and fall to my knees? There was a sneer in Eugene's voice. Jung-hee was embarrassed. Madam, what? Eugene cut Jung-hee off. Director, I'll be honest with you. I already knew everything. Jung-hee was shocked by Eugene's words. What did you say? Jung-hee asked with an expression of disbelief. Eugene took out a few documents from his bag. My adoptive parents passed away last year, and I found this while sorting through their belongings. My adoption papers and birth records. Eugene threw the papers on the desk. Jung-hee picked up the documents. It contained adoption agency records and hospital records. So I came to this hospital. I looked at records from 39 years ago. Of course, I had to spend some money. Eugene said coldly. Jung-hee's hands were trembling. Then, and that teacher Sunja is your savior, yes. I know everything. Nurse Kim Soon-ya saved my life and put me up for adoption. Eugene cut off Jung-hee. Jung-hee was confused. Then why did you treat your mother like that? Jung-hee raised her voice. Eugene stood up and walked towards the window. The director won't know. What is it like to be adopted? Eugene's voice trembled. Ever since I was little, I was different from other kids. He doesn't resemble his adoptive parents at all, neither in face nor personality. Eugene continued speaking, looking out the window. When I was in elementary school, my friends asked me, why don't I look like my mom? I couldn't answer. Eugene's voice was laced with old wounds. My adoptive parents were good people. But I was always anxious. I'm afraid I'll be abandoned. Someday, Eugene confessed. Jung-hee listened to Eugene's story quietly. And when I found out the truth last year, I was devastated. My biological mother died immediately after giving birth to me. And the person who saved my life later became my mother-in-law. Eugene turned and looked at Jung-hee. Her eyes were filled with tears. Do you know, director, what a bizarre fate that is? Do you know how confused I was? Eugene's voice rose. Jung-hee shook her head. But your mother has devoted her entire life to you. Jung-hee said earnestly. Eugene laughed. Devotion? Is that devotion? It felt like pity to me, Eugene shouted. Why didn't you tell me, mother? Why did you hide it? I had the right to know. Jung-hee was left speechless by Eugene's outcry. I wonder if my mother took pity on me and let me marry her son. Or if she accepted me as her daughter-in-law out of guilt. Jung-hee shook her head at Eugene's words. No, teacher Sunja isn't that kind of. person, Jung-hee retorted. But Yu-jin didn't listen. I tested myself to see if my mother really thought of me as family. Or if she just saw me as a poor adopted child, Yu-jin confessed. Jung-hee's eyes widened. So, are you being cold on purpose? Jung-hee asked with an expression of disbelief. Yu-jin nodded. Yes, I wanted to be angry. I wanted to tell the truth. But my mother endured it until the end. Yu-jin's voice trembled. That made me even more angry. Because it seemed like my mother took such pity on me. Yu-jin wiped away his tears. Jung-hee let out a deep sigh. Mr. Yu-jin, teacher Sunja didn't pity you. She loved you. Jung-hee said firmly. Yu-jin shook his head. Love is hiding the truth. Love? Yu-jin asked. Teacher Sunja hid it from you because she was afraid you would get hurt. I hope you are happy. Jung-hee explained. Yu-jin sat down. I just wanted to be a real family. Yu-jin said, sobbing. I just wanted to be an ordinary daughter-in-law. Not an adopted child, not a poor orphan. Jung-hee's heart ached at Yu-jin's confession. Mr. Yu-jin, you were already family. You were special to Ms. Sunja. Jung-hee put her hand on Yu-jin's shoulder. Yu-jin covered his face with his hands. But I treated my mother too harshly. In the emergency room. In the intensive care unit. Yu-jin's voice was filled with regret. Jung-hee woke up Yu-jin. It's not too late even now. Go to your mother. Jung-hee guided Yu-jin to the intensive care unit. I saw Sunja through the window. Although he was still wearing an oxygen mask, he was conscious. Yu-jin stood in front of the window and looked at Sunja. Sunja also discovered Yu-jin. Their eyes met. Tears flowed from Sunja's eyes. Yu-jin was crying too. Jung-hee opened the intensive care unit door. Come in. Your mother is waiting. Jung-hee pushed Yu-jin's back. Yu-jin slowly entered the intensive care unit. I stood next to Sunja's bed. Mother, Yu-jin called in a trembling voice. Sunja tried to take off her oxygen mask. Yu-jin quickly grabbed Sunja's hand. No, mother, just stay here. Yu-jin held Sunja's hand tightly. Sunja stroked Yu-jin's hand. And he said with his mouth shape. I'm sorry, Yu-jin. Yu-jin shook his head. No, mother. I'm sorry. I was really wrong. Yu-jin buried his face in Sunja's hands. I thought my mother felt pity for me. But I was wrong. Yu-jin confessed, sobbing. My mother loved me. From the moment I was born. Until now, Yu-jin's voice was filled with sobs. Sunja stroked Yu-jin's head. Tears wouldn't stop flowing from her eyes either. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief and love. From beyond the window, Jung-hee watched the scene. Jung-hee also shed tears as she watched her friend of 40 years finally put down his burden. A month has passed. Sunja was moved from the intensive care unit to a general ward. My health was gradually recovering. The sunlight poured in warmly through the hospital room window. Sunja sat on the bed and looked out the window. Autumn was deepening. The hospital room door opened. Yu-jin came in carrying a thermal lunchbox. Mom, it's time for lunch. Yu-jin's voice was softer than before. Sunja smiled brightly at Yu-jin. Thank you, Yu-jin. Did you make this? Sunja asked. Yu-jin nodded and opened his lunchbox. Yes, I made dried pollock soup and side dishes that Mom likes. Yu-jin carefully set the table. Sunja took Yu-jin's hand. Yu-jin, you don't have to go this far. Sunja said apologetically. Yu-jin shook his head. Mother, I'm doing it because I want to. I want to do what I haven't been able to do before, even now. There was sincerity in Yu-jin's eyes. Sunja stroked Yu-jin's hand. Yu-jin, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. Sunja began to say. Yu-jin brought the spoon to Sunja's mouth. Mom, don't talk about that anymore. It's all in the past, Yu-jin smiled. Sunja took a spoonful of soup. It's delicious. Yu-jin's skills have improved a lot. Sunja said happily. Yu-jin smiled awkwardly. Actually, I made it after looking at my mother's cookbook. It's an old notebook that was in my mother's room, Yu-jin confessed. Sunja looked surprised. You found that notebook. You started writing it when you married Taejin, Sunja recalled. I know. It's written there. Foods that my daughter-in-law, Yu-jin, would like. Yu-jin's voice trembled. My mother has thought of me as her real daughter. From the beginning. Tears welled up in Yu-jin's eyes. Sunja held Yu-jin's hand tightly. Yu-jin, you are a special child to me. From the moment you were born until now. Sunja said warmly. Yu-jin put his cheek against Sunja's hand. Mother, you are special to me too. You are the one who gave me life. Yu-jin spoke sincerely. Then the hospital room door opened again. Taejin came in. He was holding a bouquet of flowers in his hand. Mom, Yu-jin, Taejin smiled brightly. Sunja and Yu-jin also smiled while looking at Taejin. Taejin said as he placed the flowers in a vase. The director said I could be discharged next week. Sunja was delighted by Taejin's words. Really? I can finally go home. Sunja smiled brightly. Yu-jin spoke cautiously. Mother, I will take care of you when you get home. Properly. At Yu-jin's words, Sunja held Yu-jin's hand tightly. Thank you, Yu-jin. But don't push yourself too hard. Sunja said worriedly. Yu-jin shook his head. It's not a crowd. It's something I want to do. I want to be a real daughter to my mother. At Yu-jin's words, Taejin looked back and forth between the two. It was completely different from a month ago. Mom, Yu-jin, what happened? Why did you two become so different? Taejin asked curiously. Sunja and Yu-jin looked at each other and smiled. It's just that we became a real family. Sunja answered. Taejin tilted his head, but just smiled at the sight of the two people looking happy. Then the hospital room door opened again. Yoonmi came in holding some medicine. Mom, it's time to take your medicine. Yoonmi said brightly. Sunja greeted Yoonmi happily. Yoonmi, thank you. You saved my life in the emergency room. Sunja spoke sincerely. Yoonmi shook her head. No, mother, I just did what I had to do. Yoonmi answered humbly. Thank you, though. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here right now. Sunja took Yoonmi's hand. Yoonmi said, holding Sunja's hand tightly. Mother, you taught our seniors in the past. Those seniors taught me. My mother's spirit is passed down to me. Sunja's eyes turned red at Yoonmi's words. I see. The seeds I sowed are growing like this, said Sunja, moved. A week later, it was the day of discharge. Jung-hee came to see Sun-ya off in person. Sunja, now go home and get some rest. And take care of your health, Jung-hee said, taking Sunja's hand. Sunja hugged Jung-hee tightly. Jung-hee, I don't know what would have happened to me if you weren't here. Thank you so much. Sunja patted Jung-hee on the back. Jung-hee said, holding back tears. We've been friends for 40 years. Of course, Jung-hee replied with a smile. The two hugged for a long time. In the hospital lobby, there were nurses who came out to see Sunja off. Teacher Kim Soon-ya, stay healthy. Teacher, we'll see you again. The nurses greeted her with applause. Sunja bowed deeply to the nurses. Thank you so much, everyone. It's because of you that this hospital is so great. The nurses applauded Sunja's words. Taejin put Sunja in the wheelchair, and Yu-jin carried her luggage. The three people left the hospital. The sun was warm. The autumn sky was clear and high. Sunja looked up at the sky and took a deep breath. It's a really nice day, Sunja muttered. Yu-jin put his hand on Sunja's shoulder. Mother, from now on every day will be a good day. Because we are together. At Yu-jin's words, Sunja held Yu-jin's hand tightly. Yes, because we are family. Sunja smiled brightly. The three people got into the car. On the way home, the car was filled with warm conversation. Sunja looked out the window and thought that 40 years of dedication were never in vain. That true family is made of love, not blood. And the love she had cherished her entire life had finally come to fruition. A peaceful smile spread across Sunja's face. Yu-jin looked at Sunja through the rearview mirror. And I made a promise in my heart. For the rest of my life, I will become a true daughter to my mother. He said he wanted to repay the kindness that had given him life 39 years ago. Taejin looked at the two people as he drove. I was so grateful that the two most precious women in my life were now a real family. The car drove home, cutting through the sunlight. Towards a new beginning. In search of the true meaning of family. That's all for today's story. If today's story resonated with you, please share it with those around you so they can hear and see it too. Please subscribe to the channel and like it, it will be a great help in creating stories. If you leave a story or episode topic you would like to hear in the comments, we will adapt and create a related content. Thank you for your hard work today. Stay healthy and happy. Thank you.